what I would like to do first is walk you through some of the requirements and the expectations for this final project. I know some of you were wondering whether this final project is something that is real or fictitious, and as you could see from the rubric, it is something that you could either or. The idea is we would like you to examine and apply DUNAIC and DMA-DV methodologies, one of the two. One of these two methodologies, so you can have some hands-on and some practicality with the tools that you're going to learn from the chapters and from the learning modules. This is the purpose of this project, because you can't learn Six Sigma or Lean by just reading books. You have to practice what you learn. So this is the key importance from this project, and the only way I can assess whether you understand the tools or whether you'll be able to implement the tools the correct way is by seeing the deliverables that you provide through this final project. Now, this is a team project. So there are a set of components for this project. And these components that would be submitted at the end of this term would be as follows. The Six Sigma project components, you will have to provide an executive summary, the goals, scope statement, assumptions, all of these things that we'll cover thoroughly throughout the term. So rather than wait until the end of the term for you to submit this final project, there are some homework assignments for each week that would help you build the different components and glue them together at the end to make your final project something that not time-consuming or procrastinate until the last minute, which will not be feasible to achieve a final project, which is Six Sigma project. Remember, I mean, for a black belt, Six Sigma projects usually last about 3 to 6 months. For a green belt Six Sigma practitioner, it lasts about 3 months on average. So imagine trying to do 3 months work within a time frame of 1 week. That's not feasible. So that is why those homework assignments would be very helpful. What is the format for those homework assignments? Well, they're broken down very clearly. All assignments should follow the APA manual. Double space, 12-point font, Times New Roman, and so on and so forth. So try to read through this, follow this link, and it will tell you exactly for each homework assignment how it should be turned in. There will be only one homework assignment turned in per group. So if you have the problem statement for Milestone One, this activity, you're only going to provide one problem statement, okay? And this will be in a Word document. The formats will be APA style. Problems should be between 75 and 125 words in length. So make sure you use the word count in Word documents. I believe somewhere here you could find word count that will ensure that you are meeting these requirements as far as the length of words being in part of your problem statement. So it's not going to be a one sentence. It's going to be a paragraph. and this paragraph should be between 75 and 120. And it would be graded. So it would be graded using the homework rubric. I'm not going to go through all the milestones here, but it's good to know that your milestone 2 will be the define phase of project scope. So that would complete the define phase of the methodology. The rest, you will see that milestone 3 is about measure, milestone 4 is analyze, 5 is improve, milestone 6 is control, and then the final product, which will submit a final report. Okay, and it states how many pages and everything, and all the key elements that have been alluded previously. Okay. So another thing that we will stress on is the fact that it should be submitted to the discussion for peer review, 7.2 discussion. And then finally, we'll end up with an individual reflection paper. And this reflection paper will basically, we're going to talk about this later on and make sure that we explain all the details behind it. But as you can see here in the final project rubric, these are the requirements for the final project, and you can see what is an exemplary final project look like. These are the critical elements. Make sure you understand the grading, and if you would like to achieve 100%, this is the breakdown. For the short paper individual reflection rubric, this is more of an individual paper that each person would be required to submit. This is not a group paper, and like the final project and the homework assignments, those are group-oriented. So get familiar with this short paper individual reflection rubric. And if you do have any questions, please let me know. So as you can see here, there are different milestones, and each milestone will be submitted through the team form. Let me show you exactly where this Word document that includes all of these criteria along with this requirements, where should it be submitted? Okay. I know previously I mentioned that, or I provided that a Word document with instructions or step-by-step where that problem statement should be submitted. I'm going to make a little modification to that file. Reason why? Because it would be, I think it would be much more organized to load all your documents in this location. Let me show you. Well, first of all, you see there's users and groups here. Once you log into SNHU, I know your portal or your Blackboard looks quite different from mine, but at least this will give you an idea that if you click on groups, then you'll be, then you'll see the list of groups. And of course, you're going to look at the list that you are part of. As you can see, I reduced the number of groups. Initially, I had about 7. Now I reduced it to only 5. The reason why, because it's better to have a large group working together, because that seemed to match the environment at the workplace. When you work on a Six Sigma project, you definitely have multiple stakeholders as part of your project. And if you don't, please do the stakeholder analysis exercise in order to identify all the key personnel that need to be part of your project, that will deliver, that will contribute, and that will provide you with some of the voice of the customer and data collection tools and any systems involved, so on and so forth. So your group seemed to match that environment. So 5 to 6 people in each group. Once you click your group, what you'll see here is group properties, group tools, group assignments. What I'm more interested in is right here, and the group tools. what we have in the group tools, collaboration, file exchange, group discussion board, and send email. Make sure all your participation is happening through this category right here. When you try to send email, don't send it through the regular email system that we have today. Try to send email through this. But rather than rely on the emails, which I can't have visibility on, make sure that all the discussion happens in the group discussion board. Now, the answer to the question of where the problem statement should be posted, here's where the modification is going to happen on the previous instructions that I provided. Please submit the file here under the file exchange. When you click file exchange, add file, and then as far as the name, make sure you write that this is problem statement Milestone One, so I am aware that this is the final product that your team has submitted. And you browse and you pull that Word document and you upload, then you submit. That way, I can visit each group and look at their file exchange and see that whatever file is required for each milestone is posted there, versus what I suggested in the past, which is submitted through the form, which in fact I would have to scroll up and down, look for your file in order to grade it. And sometimes you'd never know that I could miss it or not see it and give you a bad grade that you don't deserve. So again, please make sure that you submit your file under file exchange by clicking this link and add file, and then browse and post that file on Blackboard. Now, I cannot emphasize enough on the group discussion board participation. Each individual for each week needs to be actively participating, even though that this is going to be a one person's, let me explain this. Even though that this is a group assignment, the grade will be the same for each individual in that group, but yet, if I see someone who's not participating enough, I might modify that grade and reflect on that person's efforts, whether it's negative or positive. Okay? So your participation is really important. Go ahead and do some research online. Provide your other classmates some instructions on how to provide resources, provide ideas around each and every activity. Do some homework through Minitab software. And if you're not familiar with Minitab, please, I encourage you and urge you to start playing with the software and get yourself familiar with it. So your participation is important. Once I come to the grading of this activity, I will be looking at the group and observing who's actively participating and who's not, as well as go to the file exchange and compare your document to the minimum requirements using the rubric and also using the critical elements of the rubric as we've seen earlier. For example, this is for the final project, but for the homework assignment, this is the critical element that I would like you to become familiar with by understanding this category particularly and trying to stay away from this category, which is shown not evident that you're meeting the requirements for the weekly homeworks. Does that sound good to you? I think this does explain where to post the document, how the grading will take place for this group work. The final project is basically tallying up and gluing all these homework assignments together, making sure once it's time ready for the final project, you start putting all the pieces together. The true project has to be exemplary. I am very, analog of things of this nature. When it comes to Six Sigma, I do mentor, I do coach, I do train, and I do this globally, and I do this domestic. And I've done in the past where I mentor people in Singapore or India. But I'm very strict about what you deliver. I want you to be really submitting quality work. And once you walk out of this course, you feel that you can take this certification, whether it's green belt or black belt, which I think you've already gone to ASU.org to see the opportunities you have once you are you feel familiar and you feel comfortable taking the certification exam. If you have any questions on that, please let me know. So this is the homework rubric for the QSO 360. This is the final project. And for the problem statement, as you can see here, there's some participation going on. Raymond, Julia, I know questions. Not sure what to start, where to go, but here's how the problem statement works. And let me kind of give you an idea. Once you identify the project, which is important, that you identify something that could be done within the 8 weeks. We have to make sure that this is an 8-week course. Make sure that you select process or project that can be completed within a semester. It's very important. If you pick and attainable and realistic goal statement, and if you pick a project that has a vague scope, something that you can't really work on throughout the 8 weeks, then obviously you're going to miss out on, having such a quality work at the end. So make sure the project identification is a very important piece. It will take a teamwork. Think about what you should be working on. Strong problem statements. Project will be much more workable. It will be much more attainable and much feasible to train of the course, which is 8 weeks from now. I have some PowerPoint slides that I would like to share with you. And by looking at the slides, it will give you some ideas on more of a summary. A problem statement. In order to define the problem, you should think about the 5 W's and 1 H. 5 W's and 1 H. We need 5 W's: what, when, where, who, why, and how. Okay? 5 W's and 1 H. And as you start defining the task is what? What is wrong? What process? Material. Okay? What is wrong? Try to explain what the problem is. Frequency. The days, the times, the patterns, the seasonality, things of that nature. When does it happen? Every Monday? 3 times a week? 500 times this last year? Okay? Where does the problem happen? The defect happen? The issue, the opportunity that you're trying to study? The subject matter? Where does it happen? Where does that problem happen? the defect, which department, which area, who, the people that we need to do. Okay? Is it shipping department? Is it finance department? Is it customer? Who needs to be involved? Who are these touch directly? And we'll give some examples. Now, also try to describe the desired end state and how to achieve it. Okay? So be specific and measurable. So how does the problem happen? Be very specific, be measurable. And we'll illustrate that. So take exact numbers or percentages. And again, remember, this is something that you could look for a project that is real. It could be projects that you could pick up. You'll be working. Explain why it's worth solving this problem. So this is the last W is why. Why? What is the significance of this problem? And why is the end state worth pursuing? Okay? Now, this is an example of a good problem statement, one bad problem statement. Let's look at this. And I'm sure you've already identified the one that is good versus the one that looks mediocre. And the first one, our customers are complaining that their orders are being delayed. Does this problem statement provide the 5 W's and 1 H that we talked about? Where, who, when, where. Did I say where? Okay. And H, how. Okay? This here to provide all that information, whereas we need 50 calls a week. So it tells us what? 50 calls, that's the frequency, week. From where? From customers looking for orders. We promise to deliver in 24 hours. While all of our products and regions are affected, so what is affected? We get 45% of these calls on Mondays. So you could go back to this and say, what is wrong? We know what's wrong from this problem statement. We get 45% of these calls on Mondays, some regions are being affected. So 50 calls a week from customers looking for orders. Now, when does that happen? 50 calls a week. And we tend to get these calls on Mondays. Where? Well, we know we're dealing here with customer service and probably shipment that's being affected. And who are people that we need to involve? We just mentioned customer service, and shipment department. And it might even be a manufacturing involved with making the product. So the regions being impacted, all of these. Where, who are the people that we need to involve? That's what we talked about. Are we specific? Yes, we are. We mentioned 50 calls, where this is just sales I'll complain about the orders being delayed. So we don't know how much. So we're not specific. And there's no measurables involved. So here where we could know how to stop this 50 calls to probably 25 by reducing by 50%. So you've got the idea. Another good example of problem statement For the past 5 months, 117 out of 259% cold chain shipments from XYZ excursions or excursions. This tells us the significance. Increasing the lead time for products released to the customer from 30 days to 90 days. See how specific we are. Increments of at least 468,000 per year. It's always good to include the dollar values, but also to include the type of defects we're dealing with. What is that quantity of defects? Put some measurables and be more specific. So sometimes there are some common problems, and I would like to provide some recommendations of statement. It could be vague problem description. When that's the case, and it's a vague problem description, make your problem description more specific, and if possible, make it measurable. You've seen a couple of examples that we just mentioned. The common problems also be not related to a business need or issue. These problem statements could be also a problem that is written as a solution, and we need to avoid that. You need to think about what problem your solution would solve, and you would have to rewrite eventually your problem statement. So don't write your problem as a solution. And let's look at some examples. So these are bad or mediocre problem statements. And we do not want to submit such thing. Again, remember, these are just examples. You'll still have to follow the rubric in order to meet the minimum requirements, such as the word length, 75 to 125 words for your homework assignment. So as we look at these examples, the shipping department needs to reduce the number of late shipments caused by their shipping and inventory errors. This is vague. It's not specific. It's not measurable. We don't know how much, and all we know is like where. We don't know what's the significance of impact. A lot of these things are not being mentioned here. Number 2, we need to improve our ability to meet target shipment dates. This is more of a solution than it is a problem. Okay? So we need to stay away from such things. We need to be more elaborate on the problem, understanding our shipments not meeting targets. This is how much shipments. This is where it happens most often. This is who is involved. This is the frequency and where and when. So let's be specific around that. We're getting a lot of complaints from customers stating that our products are arriving damaged. Again, this is not a problem statement. Our company's procedure for shipping new products has too many delays. How many days? How many incomplete documentation? When does that happen? What's the significance of that? So let's go back to the good one and leave with that. This is a good example of a problem statement. Make sure you use something similar. It doesn't have to be with cold chain shipments. It doesn't have to be temperature. It could be other things such as the customer calls. So I hope this was helpful. I'm sure the chapter would provide more direction. Make sure you follow these directions as you put your problem statement. It's the most important piece. About the problem statement. So remember these few pieces here that we mentioned in order to define the problem. I hope this was helpful to you. Make sure once everything is done, just in what I mentioned. More general questions in order for you to ask questions so others can also benefit from the answers being provided. Make sure once everything is ready, file Milestone One, Activity One, statements. Submit your work using a Word document, and once it's submitted, I'll be looking at that regularly. When it's time to make sure to submit that by Sunday, 11:59 p.m.